Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to learn how to make some Yankee bean soup. This is my one and most favorite comfort food. There you're going to start with some leftover ham bone. We're going to use a stalk of celery. We'll have more leftovers, but it depends on your taste. Two to three, actually 3 medium to large onions, pound of carrots, but again to taste, and I'll tell you in a minute. You're going to need 2 cups of great northern beans. Why my dad always called them Yankee beans, I don't know. 1 can of diced tomatoes, or 2, depending on your taste. You're going to need at least 4 dry bay leaves. These are the best for adding all kinds of flavor. Then thyme, I like ground thyme. If you have fresh is better, but we don't. And then salt and pepper to taste. And the reason we're gonna put pepper in here is because mom doesn't eat this, and B, I say salt and pepper to taste because depending on your ham and how you cooked it and how much is left and how salty the manufacturer made it, will depend on how much salt you'll need to put in your soup. So also, Kristen Fox from Indie Mama times 3, I was just going to say times 4, asked me about making recipes that are reduced in sodium. So you can actually, because you're using ham, there is sodium in this. You are boiling it down, so of course it's less. But because you're using ham, it's already going to be a little naturally salted. I guess it's not really natural, but you can limit the amount of salt. You really don't have to add salt to this. And the more vegetables you put in there, more water in there, obviously that'll thin down the taste as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm rough chopping 2 medium onions. I'm just basically not even Frenching them. I'm kind of like, Frenching them is making them like the wedges. I'm just doing that. First thing we're going to do is kind of create a stock, and then later we're going to actually make pretty vegetables to put in the soup. So what I like to do for my stock is I like to take the tops of the celeries. Nobody eats them, and they can go in there and they can give up all their beautiful flavor, as well as the core. So I basically take the bottom off the celery, the tops off the celery, pull out all of the good stalks and put them back in the bag, and then everything else goes into the stock pot. And now these carrots have seen better days, this little bag of carrots, but I wanted to use what I had left over. They actually started to grow eyes. Did you know baby carrots could grow eyes? If you don't know, baby carrots are just regular carrots whittled down to bite-sized portions. But these were so old they started to grow eyes, but they weren't smelly or funky or anything. So I just was like, okay, we can peel the eyes off. I'm a girl who's been around for a while. We've peeled eyes off carrots. But because I'm making a stock, again, they can just give up their flavor and then they're not going to be eaten anyway. Now, if you have pets who can eat vegetables, then 100% when you're done cooking and picking the ham out, then you can go ahead and they can eat these vegetables. You can eat these vegetables. It's just that they get really, really mushy because they cook down a lot. They've given up pretty much all of their flavor and nutrients to the stock. So yeah, we just like to add new vegetables in the end instead. So here's Jim. He's got the ham bone left over from Easter, and there is a few chunks of ham left. We had gotten a spiral ham, brown sugar spiral ham, and this is just the ham bone that's left over and a couple of chunks. So if you've ever gotten a spiral ham before, they don't spiral the whole thing from tip to tip most of the time. There's usually a little bit left on the butt portion of the meat where it's like chunky. So when I after Easter's over, I pack up all the slices, and I take the ham bone and then all of that chunk meat and I put it in a bag. Now, another way to add more salt without adding salt is you can leave some of the chunk meat on the side for later to add it without boiling it, which does give a much richer ham flavor. But we like to monitor our sodium intake here, limit what we can, where we can. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it all to this pot, and we're going to make an amazing stock. And this is a big soup pot. This is one from Sally, and we're just going to cover everything with cold water. Now, if you have a smaller pot and you have the same ham bone and these vegetables, you're going to get less stock. The stock will be more concentrated with flavor and more concentrated with probably the sodium from the ham. So keep that in mind. What I'm going to actually get out of this is quite a bit of soup, but this soup freezes absolutely beautifully. And that's why I like to make it. I like to basically make a huge batch, put 2 in the freezer, 1 in the refrigerator, and eat it over the course of a few months. All right. So I basically put everything in the pot, cover on high, let it get to boiling, and then we'll add 2 of the bay leaves that we talked about before. All right, and you can see now that the onions are starting to loosen up. You're starting to get a little bit of boil in there. You're going to get that little bit of muck off of the ham, but that's okay. Be able to drain that later. So we're going to add 2 of the bay leaves as well as some thyme if you want to. Thyme would be really nice to put in now if you had fresh thyme. But I don't salt and pepper at this point. This is just to make a stock. Okay? So if you want to go ahead and add some ground thyme now, it's about 2 tablespoons, but it really, all of the proportions depend on how much you're making. So I would always start with a little bit less. You can always taste it, and if you feel like it needs more, then you go ahead and add more. So now the stock has been boiling for about 3 hours, and I know that this is a time-consuming meal, but it is an easy thing to make. And in the restaurant biz, my dad, they used to refer to soup as the money maker, because you can make soup, a lot of soup, for a very, very little bit of money, but you could still sell it for, 50 cents for a cup, $1 for a bowl. Anyhow, so now we're going to use the actual vegetables that we're going to put in our soup to give it that beautiful vegetable ham soup flavor. I just realized this very, very second that the footage for the soaking the beans overnight got lost. An option is to soak the beans overnight. It's not necessary, but if you don't do it, don't add them dry to the salted water. They won't break down the same way. So we just soaked them 2 cups of beans into 2 cups of cold water. You have to kind of rinse them anyway, because sometimes you can get little rocks in your beans. Not so much anymore. It's something that used to happen more, I feel like, back in the day. But I've never had any problem with the beans from Aldi's. As you can see, most of my ingredients are from Aldi's. But you just soak 4 hours to 8 hours to overnight, and that's fine. They're just sitting on the counter in a bowl. So now we're going to finally chop our vegetables. I like a chunky soup, and I am the primary eater of this soup. So I'm going to kind of keep my vegetables even, but kind of on the chunky side. I'm going to do 3 or 4 stalks of celery. I'm going to do about a half a pound of carrots, and I'm going to do at least 1 large onion. And then I'm going to chop them all up. Like I said, I don't make my pieces too fine. I do like them to have a little heft to them. Okay. Now again, depending on how much ham you have left, how big your bone is, will depend on how long you want to cook it. 2 to 3 hours to get the good stock, but you can do longer all day. It's definitely something that's entirely customizable. All right. Now, I happen to have 2 soup pots because my dad was quite a cook. If you only have 1, I'll tell you how to transfer in a second. But what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit of cooking to our vegetables that we just chopped first. So I put a tiny bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. Olive oil also does add a little bit of flavor. And then you want to add in your chopped vegetables. And I just put a tiny bit of salt on them. I'm not trying to salt the soup, but we've talked about that's a lot of salt. Oh my goodness, that's way too much salt. But you can add just a tiny bit of salt to the onions and celery. It releases some of their water and helps the onions cook down a little bit. And I also added about a tablespoon of black pepper at this point. Okay? So if you only have 1 soup pot, you're going to need a big bowl and a colander to drain your first batch of soup to drain your stock. If you don't have a big bowl and a colander, you'll need several different bowls. What you can do is you can take a spoon and basically fish out all of the vegetables and the ham bone and the ham chunks that are left over, to put them in a separate bowl, and then you can strain off whatever liquid is left, and that's your stock. Okay, so what I did there while I was talking was I also put in about a tablespoon of the ground thyme. But again, that's to taste. I happen to like it in soup a lot. Also, at this point, if you felt like you wanted to add garlic, you could, but we don't usually typically put garlic in soup. My dad doesn't, he doesn't really make many Italian soups. He lets the mirepoix, which is the celery, carrots, and onion combination, really shine through. Okay? And now we're just going to cook them down a little bit. I don't really want necessarily color on them, but a little bit of caramelization is okay. But I really want to just cook down those spices a little bit. Okay? So, if you have, you saw me touch the pot, that this huge soup pot is still very cool, so I can put my plastic colander on there. If your soup pot is not cool, do not put the plastic colander on there, okay? But I just wanted to show you how you can do drain from your stock pot directly into your soup, or what we're going to do actually is put it in a heat-proof bowl. So I have my Pyrex bowl, which I used to what did I use my Pyrex bowl for? Anyway, I had my Pyrex bowl, and I'm going to go ahead and drain in there as well. But you can see that beautiful color and all of that, the vegetables have really given off their color. Now the ham and ham bone, we're going to take to the table. I'm going to put them in a bowl. After a few minutes of letting them cool down, letting the vegetables cook down, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick the ham apart. If you don't have the time, like if you're stretched for time, you can use like a dish towel to hold the hot ham bone and use a fork to scrape off all the meat. But most of the meat, if you cook it around 3 hours, should just fall off. Okay? So I'll show you there. And I'm just going to take my colander and I'm going to place it back on, like I said, on the bowl to drain off the rest of the goodies. And then we'll take it to the table to pick it apart. Now, like I said, all of those vegetables, if you have a compost heap, if you, I don't know, juice, I don't know what you want to do with them. They're still edible. They're delicious. They're just mush, Not delicious necessarily. They've lost a lot of their flavor, but they taste like ham. But they'd be fine to put back in the soup if you wanted to not waste them, okay? I just wanted to let you know that. All right, so now we're going to let those new vegetables cook down. Now you have to realize these aren't going to cook as long, but they are still going to add some flavor to the stock, to this soup. All right? And this is sort of where it gets, oh goody. Now we're going to just take our beans. Oh, I almost forgot to drain them. Drain off whatever excess water is there, because we don't want to dilute our stock. Look at that sink. Holy Hannah. So I just threw them through the colander and added them to the soup at this point. All right. And now after about, about 15 minutes of cooking them down, I went ahead and I added the can of tomatoes. I just, rinsed them with some soup water. Okay, and now I'm going to go pick apart that ham bone. Yep, cover it, Jerry. Cover it. Nope, don't cover it. So here's why I didn't cover it. We decided that we wanted it to be more concentrated in flavor. So the way we did was we tasted it. We said, it could use more concentration of flavor. So we left the cover off so that it could cook down. And then you really do have to taste. When you cook as opposed to baking, you do have to really taste along the way. Make sure that you get the right spices, to get the right seasoning mix, to get to see if it's too salty. You can add more water and such. Oh, and optional, is you're going to add the parsley flakes. I didn't tell you about that in the beginning. So this is just dried parsley flakes. I just usually add parsley at the end just for that freshness, but I didn't realize it had gone bad by the time I made the soup. So I just added some dry parsley just for some green, some fresh color. And otherwise it tastes just like Pop used to make it. It is the soup that brings me home always. You just get yourself a piece of rye bread or fresh bread, and you put on some softened butter. You sit down with this bowl of soup, and it is a meal. I also realized that I talked over adding the ham back. So when you cut your ham off, or if you have lots of ham, huge chunks, you can go ahead and cut them down, chop them down as well. So you want to make sure that some ham gets in everybody's bowl. So how I like to serve it, yep, I go to the bottom for 2 ladles full, and then I go to the top and get some of the beautiful broth. It's so good. That tomato just adds just a touch of what it needs, just a tiny bit of acid with that salt and those sweet vegetables and that salty ham. Oh, I'm telling you, there's nothing like this. There's nothing like this. So, listen everybody, I hope you really enjoyed this recipe. If you're a soup maker, you're probably like, yeah, I know all this already. But if you've never made soup before, it is easy. I want you to go ahead and give it a try. If you do, please give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share with friends and family. Anybody you know might be interested in learning how to make this soup. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe. And when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, take care, God bless, and see you next time. Bye!